yes. Adina.
So my question is, how do you know that a relationship is going towards like something serious versus something not?
Good question. How do I know if the relationship is heading to a serious place or to a not serious place? Relationships do get into slumps. Like people just sometimes like relationships kind of like have like they're like just not moving. But first of all, we spoke about Shomnagi. You weren't here for the second class. It was a pretty intense class. But the moment touch is involved, all lines get blurred, to be honest, just because you don't really know, because you can like totally not be, you can have such clarity that we don't have the same values. You can have such clarity that like things don't like, he's not the midos, he doesn't have the mannerisms and the character traits that I want my children to have, which is a good question to ask yourself. I daven, and my tefillos are, part of my tefillos are, may my children marry someone like my husband. You should ask your children, you should ask yourself, do you want your children to have the character traits of this guy I'm dating? But back to what I was saying, which is you can have everything not making sense and it's so clear to you doesn't make sense, and then you kiss, or he gives you a really nice hug when you really need that hug, or you do that thing, whatever that thing is, all lines get blurred. It's not right, it's not wrong, it's reality. Unless one of you is gay, then if the reality is the moment touch is involved, all lines get blurred. So it's harder to answer when someone is not being shomer nagia, but we'll try. First of all, people, I agree with Danielle, people you usually know. You can tell. You know, if you're asking the question, you might feel like there's something up. At the same time, relationships generally progress. They generally progress. How did I know I wanted to marry my husband on a personal note? Mind you, we were dating the Orthodox way, but I told you, I made it very clear to him, like no surprises, like no surprise engagements, like, you know, meaning, because to me that's not funny. Surprise engagements, I don't know where they're from, I don't think that's funny. Surprise, you're going to spend the rest of your life with me, like, what kind of a surprise is that? Like, surprise, I adopted a baby for you, like, just get me a bracelet, you know what I mean? Like, I just don't think it's a funny surprise, but some people do. Unless you know that you want to marry him and he just needs to surprise you. But I'm saying a surprise in the sense that I'm genuinely surprised. Like, really, you're proposing? Like, I'm not ready for that. That's what I mean. So how did I, so I made it clear to my husband, I don't want, like, no surprises. I'll let you know when I'm ready. And it got to a point, it was after a few months of just like, what's next? You know what I mean? Like what's the next step? If you're kind of just like cruising the whole time, like staying stagnant, then what's the next step? You know it's going to a not good place if you are more annoyed with him. Either that means you have your period, or else that means you're just more annoyed with him. Your eyes are more opened. You're seeing more things. Things are just more clear to you. Like, why did he just do that to his friend? Why is he commenting on what that girl is wearing? Why did he not like pay any attention to the fact I just made him a whole dinner, right? Why is he not like, when was the last time he gave me a compliment? Things like that. Why does he think it's funny when the door slammed in my face by mistake? He's like, ah, right? And you start noticing these things. That's heading to a not good place. You know it's progressing when you're having these thoughts of like, could I spend the rest of my life with him? Again, this applies to all of us. Each relationship is unique. So, Adina, with you, I'm happy to meet individual, and all of you, I'm happy. I want to meet individually. We'll get to it hopefully next week. It's been crazy. Next week, God willing, I'm going to meet with all of you. But so each relationship is individual. We're now speaking to a class, in a class setting, so we're giving generalizations, but no generalizations are done. Okay, so everyone's individual. But you know it's heading to a good place, generally speaking, when it's so cute when he's playing with those kids. Like, I don't know, I could like imagine him like being the father of my kids, or I don't know, how old am I? I'm 25. I don't know, marriage is, my friends are getting married. I don't know, do I want to marry him? And if you feel when you're saying these things, you feel these things coming up, then like you feel kind of like, no, like a pit in your stomach, either a good pit, but if it's a bad pit, like, oh, no. Then that means like, why do I not want that? Also, a great question to ask yourself of, is this going somewhere? or more than if it's going somewhere, if you want to ask yourself, do I want to marry this person? A great foundational question is, if this person never changed a day in his life, would I still want to marry him, right? Because if the answer to that is no, if the answer to that is, if he never changed a day in his life, I want to marry him, heck no, then you should not be getting married to him. Why? Because marriage isn't a hospital, right? It doesn't fix problems. The only problem it fixes if you view singlehood as a problem. That's the only solution it solves. Other than that, it creates more, if anything. Why? Because you're two whole worlds coming together. Now let's live together and make this world work, right? So far, am I making sense? Yeah? This great childhood friend of mine, she dated this guy for 10 years, okay? I remember when I used to go back to Toronto to visit when I was living in Israel and I was single. And we'd go and I even met her boyfriend and we all hung out together. He's like, he's a good guy or whatever. She's not religious, this girl. They even lived together. And she finally got engaged. I can't believe you're marrying him. Oh my God. And then I went to Toronto 2 weeks ago and we got together. And then I said, oh my God, okay, my husband's going to come, because my husband heard so much about this girl who she's like this, you have this wild childhood friend, so that's mine. And so I was like, my husband's coming, you going to bring your husband? She mumbled something on the phone. I was like, what? She's like, I don't know, we'll talk later. So I'm like, you guys divorced? She's like, we'll speak about it. I'm like, what? And so we sat down, and I was like, what? I was like, the first day I said to her, what? She got married 8 months ago. And I said to her, what happened? She said, yes, we're getting divorced. I'm like, you dated for 10 years. It's not a chiddush you say in Hebrew. Chiddush comes from have you ever heard people use that expression? It's not a chiddush. Or if you're Sephardi, you say chidush. It comes from the word chadash, which means new, which comes from the word Rosh Chodesh, right? We have Rosh Chodesh every month. Because Rosh means the head, Chodesh is a month, but Chodesh, right? Every month we have the ability to be Chadash, new again. So when people say it's not a Chiddush, they mean it's not like an insight. It's not something new that I've never heard before, right? So when I'm saying it's not a Chiddush, I just went on tangent. When I'm saying it's not a Chiddush, I mean there are plenty of people who I know, and I'm sure you know, who've been dating for 15 years, got married and divorced. Anyways, back to the story. So I said to her, so what happened? She says, we're getting divorced after 8 months. She's like, yeah, for 3 months I haven't even touched him. I'm like, I was like, how'd that happen? She said, all my friends around me were getting married, and I kind of pressured him to get married to me. And she told me this with a pen molly, with her, I heard it straight from her mouth. She said, if I thought he would have the title husband, he would be a different person. I was like, did you really think that? I didn't tell her that. I had a pit in my stomach. I felt so bad. You thought him having the title husband would make him different? She didn't want to marry him when they were dating, but maybe if he's a husband, he'll be different. Surprise, he's not different. So they're getting divorced. So if you ask yourself this question, if this guy never changed a day in my life, would I still want to marry him? You hope the answer is yes. Doesn't mean change yes, you can change his wardrobe, okay? You just go shopping, you can change his wardrobe, you can change how he shaves, you can change things like that, but I'm talking about the person. So essentially, how do you know if it's going serious or not, if it's going to a good place or bad place? The most basic answer is to ask yourself these questions. Ask yourself, and I'm happy again to meet with you individually, but ask yourself these questions. What do I like most about him? Right? Why do I like him? Right? Which character traits of his do I want our children to have? Could I imagine having children with him? What's his plan? What's my plan? Why do I think he's dating me? If I told him for a week I don't want to sleep with you, what would he say? How does he treat other people? It's a great question to ask also, because it's either to treat someone you love and who's giving all sorts of pleasure to treat them nicely, right? How does he treat other people? How does he speak about ex-girlfriends? So when you break up, we'll speak about you the same way. That's a reflection of how he speaks about people, how he views people. If you're walking down the street and he makes a comment, that girl dressed is that means it's how he views the world, not just that individual case. But when we are in a relationship, we don't see it, which is why I very strongly believe this is another great tip, having dating mentors. Doesn't mean a dating coach, you speak to them all the time. It just means it could be a really good friend of yours. It could be your mom, if you're that rare person who has a great relationship with their mom, right? Or it could be your aunt or whoever it is that you just just speak things over. Why? Because they'll notice things that you don't notice, Because when we're in relationships, God made it that way, that I am so infatuated with you. I am so in love with you. Nothing else exists. I can tell. It's actually a talent of mine. Without a shadow of a doubt, if couples are dating or if couples are married, if I see them in a restaurant or if I see them walking. How can you tell walking? They're not moving. When I was dating my husband, I used to literally think, how do couples get anywhere? How do people function in life? Why? Because I am so completely enthralled by you, like nothing else exists. How do I know if they're married? Right? Or how do I know if you're dating in a restaurant? You're actually looking. How do I know if they're married? They're going like this. Oh yeah, yesterday you did that? Really? Where's that waitress, right? Like when you're dating, you don't even know, waitress? Oh right, should we order food? We've been sitting here for an hour, right? That's the nature of I'm so infatuated with you, right? And you hope it's not infatuation. You hope it's real love. Personally, I don't believe you can really love someone until you're married, but you can really, really like them. But that's my personal opinion. Many people disagree with me. So the nature of dating is that I'm so completely taken and overwhelmed by you, and that's a good thing. That's a great thing. Run with it. Judaism's all for that. I don't know why people rush engagements. Dating is a beautiful time. When you get married, it's amazing and it's wonderful, but you have more things to deal with. Now all of a sudden you're dealing with bills and homes and cooking and jobs and enjoy the dating. The dating is great, but the nature of it is that I'm so overwhelmed by you. So it's helpful to have someone who you just bounce things off of. You just speak things over with, or you just let them know how the date was, right? And they can kind of give you the feedback, really, he said that? You're like, yeah, but isn't that funny? And you're like, no. Right? Have you ever heard had people tell you stories about the guys they're dating or things their friends say or things their parents say that you're like, right?
But when you're infatuated with somebody, you can tell somebody what they're doing and they'll be like, wait, that was weird, but you won't even, I feel like you still wouldn't think twice about it because you didn't feel that way.
I think it definitely helps though, because that's something I used to do. It's because when you think things about someone, you might notice that someone you're dating has a slightly negative trait or trait that isn't right for you.
Wait, you're speaking in an accent. Speak slower.
Sorry. It's something I used to do. If I'm dating someone and I've noticed there's an attribute about them that either isn't particularly good or isn't good for me, you rationalize it in your mind, and when you're talking to yourself, there's 100 different thoughts going on, but they're all trying to get to the same point of it's okay.
Right, you're trying to make it that it's okay. Exactly.
As soon as you get a friend, they don't have to say anything. You say it out loud to them, this person is like this, and they just look at you, and you have to out loud justify it. That's when it becomes very real, and you can't go anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm a big fan of having someone on the outside. That was a great way that you said it, which is when I think, and we're smart enough, I'm sure you learned this, if not, I hope you will learn it. Women have, it's called bina yetera, which means an extra intuition. Women have that. Women totally have that. Women have that, which is you can be walking, you just you get a feeling for someone, I don't know, he's not so safe, I don't want my kids hanging around that child, things like that. Women have that. I just don't like that. It's kindergarten, I just want to go to a different teacher. So women have this extra intuitions. Even if you can be out to lunch, you're not the most intuitive person, you usually inside you feel something. And what Rachel said, which is a great point, which is we speak it over in our head saying, but he only said that because I said this. He even told me he's not like that. I remember too, and you're finding all the times you're almost out of breath, coming up with excuses in your head of why it's okay, until you speak it over with a friend or a mentor, and they're like, really? And what Danielle is saying is also true, which is even if a friend tells me, I may not want to accept it. However, if I'm the kind of person who won't accept it from a friend, that will probably play out in all areas of my life, which is I'm probably living a very risque and wild life. You've probably gotten into trouble many times before. Or I'm speaking about myself, right? You've probably gotten into trouble many times before just because, that means when your teacher said that, you still don't listen. When your parents said don't touch fire, you didn't listen. So probably, but I'm talking about healthy individuals who are able to hear. It doesn't mean you'll like what they say, right? And there are times where you just have to let people make their own mistakes, right? Many times, because you can never change anyone. But if your friend is asking you, then you can say something. So that's a good way also to speak things out with someone and to ask yourself these big questions. So those are the kind of questions. Again, ask yourself, where is this relationship going? Ask yourself, what would he say? All guys hate this conversation. Like, how would he react if I said, honey, we need to talk, right? Like, where's this relationship going, right? And if he falls on his face when you say that, so where does he think this relationship is going, right? Like, where does he think this relationship is going? I'm debating if I should say this story. I should say it. I should say it on camera. I could say it on camera because I heard. I could say it on camera because I heard it on camera. This rabbi who's like, I'm a big fan of his, and he's really out there. He said this story, which this girl's mother, this like Orthodox girl in the whole school system, was, her mother called her saying, my daughter's doing all these bad things, and like, you have to help her. He's like, Mrs., I'm not going to help you, like, let her do her thing. She's like, no. She called him again. You have to help me, Rabbi. My daughter's doing like that thing. She's dating this guy. It was all about this guy she's dating. He's not religious, and they're like touching, and they're doing it. Like, you have to help. He's like, fine, send her to me. She comes to his office, and they speak. And she's like, Rabbi, you don't get it. This guy's going to marry me. He says he's going to marry me. I would never do this with any other guy. You don't get it. He's going on and on. He's like, really? He said he wants to marry you? And she's like, yeah, isn't it amazing? Me, like, I thought he wants to marry me. So he goes, do you mind calling him? Let me meet both of you together. And so she comes, and she's like so excited, like, see, the rabbi's meeting my boyfriend. I knew I'm going to marry him. And they're sitting there, and the boy's saying, yeah, Rabbi, I know we're not Shomer Nagia, I know that, but like, I'm going to marry her. And he's like, yeah, you want to marry her? I was like, yeah. And so he goes, guys, hold on one moment. And he goes to the kitchen, and he calls two other men or rabbis who are in the kitchen. I'm not saying I agree with the story. I'm not saying I disagree with the story. I'm just saying what the story is to bring out a point. He calls out two other men from the kitchen who he called beforehand and said, come here, please. And the guy and girl are like, who are these? And he goes, here, you have a beis din. In Orthodox law, in order to have a halachic court case, right, then you need to have three men. And if you make a swear or a promise in front of three men, that means it's a valid swear. And in order to annul that, in order to take that away, you have to speak in front of three men. You know what I'm talking about? Okay? So he takes these three men, and they're like, what's going on? And he's like, here, I have this paper for you. I, Josh so-and-so, swear in front of this and this and this rabbis that I am going to marry so-and-so. Here, please sign. And the guy's like, whoa, what are you talking about here? And he's like, you just told me. You said, Rabbi, I swear I'm going to marry her. He's like, I said, maybe I'm going to marry her. Like, I can't, you want me to sign? I'm like 20 years old. You want me to sign that I'm going to marry this girl? I can't. And the rabbi gets up and he goes, when you're kissing her and whispering in her ear, I want to marry you, are you saying, maybe I want to marry you? Maybe I want to spend the rest of my life with you? And he said, the guy got up and he's like, beep, beep, you, Rabbi. And he walked out. And he said, the girl was there in tears, right? Why? Because when he's saying, I want to marry you, and he's whispering in her ear, I want to spend the rest of my life with you, right? He's not saying maybe. And she's actually believing it. Right? And now when she saw that, she was ready to sign on the dotted line. Like, let's have it. It wasn't a ksuba, it wasn't a wedding document. It was just like, I'm just saying I'm going to marry her. And she's like, I'm ready to sign. Why isn't he? Right? So, crazy story, right? So he's like, so what I'm saying is ask yourself these questions. How would my boyfriend even react if I broached the subject of where's our relationship going? Of where are we heading to? If he's going to panic, then why? Because this guy was using this girl, right? And they know exactly what to, it's just how, not all men, men aren't like that. Boys are like that, right? And if he's going to freak out, then where does he think this is going? What does he think that we're doing here exactly? Because when you're giving him what he wants, you may be thinking one thing and he may be thinking a very different thing. Yeah? So relationships are complex. And they're complicated, but they shape the world. The whole world just wants, it's really relationships. The secular world has kind of ruined that for women. Men also, they've kind of ruined it. And when women are giving out and giving their bodies, oftentimes they have a very different intention than the man. So you want to make sure you're both on the same page. And they say a happy wife is a happy life, right? It's the same thing. A happy relationship really is a happy life. Because you can have two people, either they have a wonderful marriage and life is wonderful. Wonderful doesn't mean easy. Wonderful just means they're working together. Hollywood forgot that end of it. They say you live happily ever after, period. We say you live happily ever after a lot of hard work, right? So they forgot that kind of was like a, they cut out the run-on sentence. So, but if you can have a couple, and again, I'm sure we know people like this who, based on who they marry, their life took quite a different turn. Right? So when you are young enough, and I beg you, when you're young enough to ask yourself these big questions, and it can be hard. Either it can be a breeze, or also it can be really hard and really raw and painful, but you're really saving yourself a headache, more than a headache in the long run. Because even if you get divorced, even if a person, I should say not you, even if a person gets divorced, oftentimes, unfortunately, people think divorce cuts it. Divorce is just a transition of emotion. Meaning, I was married to you, I had this intense love for you. Now I got divorced, so now I have this intense hate for you. But that emotion is still there. You have these people who've been married for 20, 30 years, they are still, divorced. For 20, 30 years, they are still so enraptured by the other person. Oh, really, he's dating someone? Who's he dating? Why do you care, man? He's like 80 years old. You got divorced 30 years ago. Right? But you're so enraptured. Why? Relationships, it's a connection. It's meant to be that way. It's meant to be that way. We believe when a soul was in heaven, it was one complete soul. And then when it came down to earth, right before it came down, God split them. So we know that God split the soul into two. We see that with Adam and Chava. People say, why was man born first? He wasn't. Do you read the text in Bereshis? Vayivra Elokim es ha'adam. I'm reading straight from in Genesis and Bereshis. Vayivra Elokim et ha'adam B'Talmo, and God created man in his image, B'Telem Elokim, right? In the image of God, Baroto, he created him. Zachar unekeva, male and female, bara otam. Male and female, he created them. Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve were created back to back, male and female. And then we know Adam and Chava were two separate beings, two separate entities. So why did he create them as one unit? Zachar unekeva, bara oto. He created them as one unit, but he was going to split them anyways. So man and woman, husband and wife should know, you were originally one. You were originally one. God didn't create them two separate entities. It's a real reality that husband and wife are soulmates. Oh, he's my soulmate. You're soulmates. You were actually one soul. We believe when they came down, they got split and you find each other, right? Which like people say, I just knew. Not everyone feels that, and many people feel that. I just knew. How did you just know? Because your soul actually knows it, right? So when you are young enough to ask yourself these big questions about who your soulmate is going to be and what kind of soulmate you are looking for, do it. Why? So you can save yourself the headache. I spoke to another person of, and again, headache is such a light word. I spoke to another person. I said, how's it going? I just heard you had another baby, you have 2 kids. He's like, whatever, like my wife needs to get her act together. He like said something like that. I'm like, what? Again, they dated for 12 years, this couple. They got married. He's like, and he was going on and on. He keeps Shabbos, but she doesn't keep Shabbos, and she wanted to keep Shabbos. You dated for 12 years. You dated for 12 years. You want to separate from this woman because you got married 3 years ago they got married? 3 years ago you got married, now you want to separate? Well, you didn't ask yourself the big questions before, right? Ask yourself the big questions now, right? So you're not crying about them later. Relationships really, I can speak about this forever because it's so important, because it's so foundational, because it shapes the way that we view the world. Who we marry will shape how we view the world, and what our relationship is like, yeah.
How do you find these people or this one man? Because there are so many things you need to consider. This, like your whole value system, your whole goals in life. Like these are big, big things. They're not like, oh yeah, blah, 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 blah. How do you find someone who matches up so well with that you can create a successful marriage? That seems really terrifying to me.
Yeah.
Like it's such a specific thing, you know. Everyone is so hugely different. How do you find your like? How?
It's a good question. Again, I'm kind of biased in the sense that I'm coming from the Orthodox world. I don't believe, when I say shidduch dating, by the way, I don't mean sitting in front of a shadchan, sitting in front of a matchmaker saying, I'm looking for this, and I never went to a matchmaker once in my life. I believe they're great, but it can mean matchmaker means your friend sets you up, your aunt, your mother, your daughter, hopefully not your daughter, your aunt, your mother, your father, people you know, friends set you up. It happens a lot. Someone goes out with a guy, like, oh, he's not for me, but he's for you, and they set them up with a friend, right? So that's what I mean by matchmaking. So I'm coming a bit biased, because that's what this shidduch system is for. First of all, if you're dating Orthodox, you already narrowed it down. We'll get to the secular world, but I'm just saying where it's originated from, which is you're already narrowing your search to like 5 million people, if even, probably like 100,000 people who are Jewish, who are Orthodox, right? And are living an Orthodox lifestyle. I don't know, 100,000 people? I don't know how many people, not too many. And then the whole point of being set up is you are only being set up with people who are similar to you, which means before you even meet each other, you're saying, do you want this? Do you want this? I only want to live in Israel. I only want to live in America. Great, let's not set them up. Let's save you that pain. Let's save you a breakup. Let's save you that emotional energy. Okay, she wants to have 10 children. He never wants to have 10 children, right? And the matchmaker, your friend, whoever is, weeds these things out for you. It is harder in the secular world just because you can date the whole world, right? Unless you narrow and say, I'm only going to date a Jew. That does narrow it down, but the question is, how do you know who's Jewish? How are you meeting him? It is harder, which is why, again, that's why these things were put in place. If you're Shomer Negiah, then you will not sleep with him after the third night or whenever it is, and then that way you weren't vulnerable with him yet. So even if he says, I never want to have children, then you can say, 1 second, hold on a minute, but this isn't for me. But if you've already been so vulnerable with him, you gave him your heart and your body and your soul, literally, then he said, I never want to have children, you say, I'm sure he'll adopt. Who doesn't want to have children? Like, everyone wants to. He just doesn't know he doesn't want to have children yet, right? And you kind of save yourself that pain by, first of all, not getting intimate. By not getting intimate, that even means just holding hands. Because again, hormones, everything flying like out the window. So it depends. They have speed dating, and they have being set up in the secular world also. I'm sure. You tell me.
Yeah, it's not so successful though. They don't really focus on the important things, I feel.
Well, there's like a lot of like online dating too now.
Yeah.
Like that's a big thing.
Right. So they have online stuff. It is harder. A lot of times people don't know what they want also. So they're hoping when they find the person, they'll realize what they want. Don't do that either. 2 half people don't make a whole person. 2 whole people make a whole person, right? So you can't be like broken and he's broken, now we'll fix each other. It doesn't happen. It doesn't work like that. Hollywood lies. Look at Hollywood. Have you seen Hollywood? You've seen it. Have I told you the story of my husband and his band? No? Pardon? We'll say it really quickly. My husband, he was in a rock band for 10 years of his life. He's from LA. If you see him, have you any of you never been to us for Shabbos? You're all here till after the holidays? Yeah? Great, because we're moving, so you'll come to us after the holidays. My husband was in a rock band in LA for 10 years of his life. He did not always look the way he looks now. And he was signed to Warner Brothers, and he did Warped Tour. You know what that is?
Yeah,
okay?
it's Warped Tour. No way.
Yeah.
Hold on a second.
I just got such up in Adina's eye. So anyways, we'll speak out later. He did Warped Tour, and he was signed to Warner Brothers, and he had a record out. And he was at first, when he was doing Warped Tour, he saw some of his favorite bands. He played with Plain White T's and bands like that. Some of his favorite bands who he was hanging out with, he saw their kids who were 8-year-old children with piercings and smoking. And he saw these people who were his icons depressed out of their mind. Okay? That was a big shock for him, but maybe it's just them. Anyways, at his record debut party, one of his bandmates came up to him and said, "Hey buddy," and put his arm around him, "when we doing this till?" And he said, "When we doing what till?" He's like, when we doing this till? And he's like tour successful, right? And his friend's like, "Well, when's that?" And he said, like, dude, just like get off, like, what are you doing? Right? Like, we're at our party, like get off my back. Like a good Jewish boy, that question bothered him. And he went home and he thought, well, when's successful? So like a good Jewish boy, he did his homework. And he said, I am going to make a chart. I am going to list my top 10 favorite bands, icons, celebrities, success stories, who I view as success, Green Day, bands like that. And I'm going to do a medium of how many records do they need to sell a year, how many months a year were they on tour, how many concerts they need to do a year, how many awards, et cetera, how many records they need to sell, etc. And once I have the median, the average of my top 10 favorite bands who've already reached success, that will be my success. Clear? Pretty simple. He started doing that research, and he came across things that he didn't want to find. Not that he didn't want to find, that he wasn't looking for. 10 out of 10 of his favorite bands were either never married or married to multiple women. Either never had children or had multiple children with multiple wives. Either attempted to or did take their own life and were addicted to some sort of substance abuse, okay? 10 out of 10. When he was doing this, he was like, whoa, this is my success. This is my success. He took a step back, and it's a long, in theory. He took a step back, and it's a long story, but in short, he quit the band, and he came to Israel, and he learned Torah. Why? Because Hollywood doesn't tell you that. And if you're only looking at what the world says, that Prince Charming, that's Prince Charming, so you're not going to be happy in your marriage. Ask yourself these questions now. You know that song, when I grow up, I want to be rich, I want to be famous, you know that song? Okay, right? So like, that's where we want to go, because they look like they have it happy. It's not like that. That world's not like that. So you want to check with yourself in terms of life, where you're heading in life, and in terms of relationship, to get a real picture what it means to be married, to get a real picture of what it means to live with someone, right? People say love is blind. Judaism, we say love isn't blind. Love is you take a magnifying glass and you focus on every good quality of that person to learn the mechanics of how relationships work. Which before you get yourself into that situation of, I committed the rest of my life to you, who do you want to commit the rest of your life to? And that's pretty much it. I mean, on one foot.
How do you find appropriate guidance? You're talking about like mentors and things like this, but if you're not in the Orthodox world and you're not in the Shidduch system, how can you decide what's an appropriate mentor?
That's a great question. Do any of you have mentors?
My friends are, they're my age or a little bit older, they're single or dating, they're not successfully solid married people, 20 years experience, And
First, those of you people with 20 years experience, but do any of you have people with role models? All right, that's a problem. To not have a role model. Common, normal, you're not weird. But the first thing is to get yourself a role model, to get yourself a mentor. Doesn't mean, hi, can you be my mentor? Hi, can I come talk to you? It means I really, usually teachers or aunts. If you have an aunt who you're really close to and even if she doesn't have to be religious, but if she's just someone who really has her life together, your aunt or your mother, I wish I could run my house the way my mom did, so they can be your mentor and speak to them. If you have a teacher, even from elementary school, someone who, or high school, who you feel like they got life. Right? Or you can have people you can just, especially in Neve, it's a very normal thing of can I call you or can I meet with you and you'll be my mentor? Or I've taught in other seminaries where girls came up to me and said, I taught them once a week for a whole year. They didn't really not much relationship building. They said, when I date, can I call you? To have someone there, you want to. It's a great question. It's an important question. How do you find a mentor? You need to find one, right? And the how is, who are people that you respect? Who are people that you look up to? And if there's no one that you look up to, either it's an issue with you and stop being so judgmental, or else it means you need to go to better places. You need to either stay in the seminary that you're in, or go somewhere else, or find someone who you want to feel, who you feel like I would love to be like them. Or even if I don't want to be like them, then even I really respect the way they live their life. It doesn't have to be, you can find this, I personally like old people. Like, even like finding like 80-year-old grandmothers. You don't have to want to be like them, but you can like you know what I'm talking about. Just someone who you feel like has wisdom, someone who you feel like has knowledge.
I'm so British, sort of like asking someone for like long-term like life advice is so terrifying.
It's not even necessarily long-term life advice.
Yeah.
Most importantly, it's obvious. Find someone who you respect, you look up to. It doesn't mean you have to want to be like them, but you respect, you look up to, and you see that they have wisdom, not necessarily knowledge. And don't confuse knowledge for wisdom, right? Knowledge is information. They can know everything backwards and forwards, but if they don't like understand life, and most importantly, that they understand you. You need to find someone who you feel like they get you. Why? Because advice and guidance, even in halacha, is very individual. What I would tell one person and what I would tell another person are two very different things. Why? She needs to hear this and she needs to hear this, right? So you can have someone saying, what? You're dating a guy who's not religious? Like, are you crazy? Like, break up with him. Where someone who gets you knows, like, you've only had unhealthy relationships in your life. The last boyfriend you dated was an addict. This is a good, stable, solid person. Like, I would stay with him, see where this goes. Do you know what I mean? You need to find someone who gets you as a person, because the advice is drastically different. May not be drastically different, but it's different, unique, it's individual. So you want to find someone who sees you as an individual.